So good morning. For those who don't know me, I'm John, Zendejas. That's my brood over there. All those wonderful people. You're included. So, I've been really trying to focus on just having a conversation with God every morning and trying to understand what He's been telling me and teaching me. And the thing has been identity. Who you are. You know, there's a lot of things that say who you are. Those of you that are over 18 have an ID, driver's license. It's an identification. Who are you? But the biggest thing now has been not just who are you, but whose are you, right? You're God's child. You have the right to say, I am a child of God. And that comes with so much. That comes with power. But that also comes with love and compassion. It comes with conviction, but not condemnation in whatever goes on in your life. So I was reading this morning something that keeps coming up to me over and over again. And yeah, right there. 1 Kings 18 and verse 20, for y'all who want to know where it's at, it's kind of what Sheila was talking about last night, was Elijah and the prophets of Baal up on Mount Carmel. It's such a cool story that, you know, it hasn't rained in like 3 years. Elijah goes up with all the prophets of Baal. They both have their own altars. And what he was doing was showing who the real God was. He knew God's true identity. He knew whose he was too. The prophets of Baal go up there, they set their altar up and everything, and they're crying out and they're yelling and all this stuff, trying to get their God to answer. But we knew that that was a false God. Elijah did. I've heard this story a bunch of times from different, preachers around the country, and it's always the funniest thing ever because it's like Elijah, how gangster he is. It's all like, speak a little louder. Maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he's out. Do a little more. Maybe your God doesn't hear you. Maybe he's not, listening. But the moment Elijah started his, when he spoke to God, when he prayed, when he set his altar up, just to kind of like one more jab, he soaked the entire thing in water. He prayed, and fire came down and consumed the entire thing. And then at the end, he goes off and, rounds up all the prophets of Baal and kills them. tells the king, hey, you need to get running. It's about to start raining. Big old rainstorm comes down. He outruns the chariot. So he knew who he was. He knew who God was. He knew that identity of who he was and who God was. And when the king got down back to his wife, told her what happened, she sent a letter or whatever they did back then to Elijah and said, I'm going to kill you. And after all of that, he knew who he was. He still took off. He still ran into the wilderness. Our identity can get squashed so quick by this world, by things that may scare you. Like coming up here, I don't usually speak into a microphone. I don't know why I don't like them. They're kind of intimidating to me. But I'm up here because I know whose I am, and I knew what I was here to do, is to speak to y'all about identity. My identity, the old man that I used to be, a lot of you don't know it. I'll give you a little bit of it. I grew up, obviously, in Houston. My parents split at a young age. My mom got into drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, went to jail. I bounced around from house to house, family members, friends, living in the hood, living in what was the hood now, is like one of the rich part of Houston. But that's not who I identify with anymore. That's why I don't ever bring it up. Somebody asked me a while back, why don't I ever give my testimony of where I came from? Because that old man is dead. That's not my identity anymore. That's not who I'm to be known as. I'm to be known as a child of God, a preacher, someone that can speak into your life, someone that can teach, because that's what God called me to be. That's where my identity lies, is in God, right? If you go over to Luke 2 real quick. Let's take a look at Luke. Thanks, Sean. Thanks. It's still stuck in my head from this morning. In a little bit, we might roam over to Romans. Yeah. So in Luke 2, in verse 41, it's talking about Jesus Christ when he was a boy. It says, every year Jesus' parents went up to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. And after the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. Nowadays, if I left my kid and I traveled a day, I got a long way to go back. So you got to think of how annoyed his parents were, how concerned, but how annoyed that they had to turn around and go all the way back, right? After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts. So not only did it take a day to go, a day to come back, and then 3 days of searching, almost a week. Yesterday, Katie took off, went to the store, had the baby, and had our oldest. Lily was over here playing with Play-Doh. I had no idea where Gabriel was. He's my second oldest. She didn't tell me that Sean had him down by the lake. And immediately, I know we're here among believers. You know, I know God's got my kids safe. But that parental mindset kicked in like, where's my child? There's water, there's hills. Where is he? So I freaked out for about half a second. And God told me right then, calm down. He's okay. So I walked around and then I found him. Imagine not being able to find your kid for a week. And after 3 days, they found him sitting in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." And instead of, "I'm sorry, Mommy, it won't happen again," "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" That's what he said, because he knew who he was. He knew his identity. He knew right then, why? Why search for me? You know I'm about my Father's business. Jesus Christ knew his identity. He's the Son of God, right? Holy and blameless. He knew what his role was. And that's what we're learning now is who you are, whose you are, what's your identity, what are you called to? Roam over to Romans for me. I'm going to tell you who you are. Wrong one. I might tell you. Romans 12. And in verse 2, your identity says who you are, right? And it says, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove the will of God." What the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Be not conformed to this world. Your identity shouldn't be in this world. It should be a new creation in Christ, right? It should be a believer. When you walk into a room, it should light up. Light and darkness cannot coexist, right? If I walk into a room, do I turn on a light or do I turn down the darkness? I turn on a light, right? If it's a dark room, hopefully. When we walk into a room, it should light up because your identification, who you are. When you walk in, people should know it. Those other devil spirits that may be wandering around, they should know it. They shouldn't be hanging around. They won't be once you realize what your identity is. When I walk into somewhere now, I know that people know I'm there. One, I'm a big guy. Usually I have a bigger beard too. So I'm identified pretty quickly. But in the spiritual realm, I'm even bigger. Right? I walk in, spirits flee. They have to because of who I am. If you go back a couple chapters, go to Romans 6 real quick. We'll start out in 1. It says, "What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may increase? May it never be. How shall we who died to sin still live in it?" If your identity is in Christ, if your identity is a child of God, should you still be living in the ways of the old man? No. Right? That's like taking a bath and then playing in the mud again. Does it make any sense? Not at all. Especially if you're about to go out. If you're going to go out and go do something, you want to take a shower, get cleaned up, are you going to go play in the mud and then go do something? No. You are to be an example. You are to be a shining light. So why become a child of God just to go back to the way you were? Why identify in the old man's nature? If I were to identify in the old man's nature, half of you people in here, you people, half of y'all wouldn't even like me. I can never say that I was ever in a gang or anything like that, but I've sold a lot of drugs. I've done a lot of bad stuff. I've stole things. I've stole cars. 90% of you people would not want to talk to me because I would be the person that, is in the world and is not the nicest person. I used to take pride in calling myself the biggest a-hole in the room. But that's not me anymore, right? That's not who you guys are anymore. I don't care what, right? I don't care where you came from, what you've done. That's not who you are. Go down a little bit, down to verse 5. "For if we become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old self was crucified with him, in order that our body of sin might be done away with, so that we would no longer be slaves to sin, for he who has died is free from sin." If you have died, if the old man has died, you're free from it now. That's not you. That's not what holds you down. We were just talking a minute ago, me and Lady Di over there, my mother-in-law. I didn't think I really had a big problem with drinking, like alcohol and all that stuff. I drank, but it was just on occasion here and there. But I realized after asking God what to do, it had more of a hold on me than I thought. When I got rid of it and got it out of my house, it was like unlocking the door. That was the lock that was holding me in. I unlocked the door and I was able to walk into what God had for me and for my family. Our entire lives have changed because of that one thing. All the rest of it has fallen off because I am a new man. I'm a new creation. Right? Verse 12 says, "Therefore do not let sin reign in your mortal body so that you obey its lusts." Get rid of it. All right? "And do not go on presenting the members of your body to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. For sin shall not be master over you." For sin shall not be master over you. It can't be. "For you are not under the law, but under grace. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? May it never be." May it never be. What you identify with will either free you or hold you back. Don't be held back. There's so many people in here that have so much to offer, and either fear is holding you back or something in your life that you haven't let go of is holding you back. If you are a new creation, if you are a new child of God, don't let it hold you back. Keep moving forward. Go out and bless people. Minister. Speak the word. Speak in tongues. Just pray for them. That's it. I love you guys.